Blocks are new as of version 2.0 and allow you to logically group together tasks and apply certain directives to them. This is useful with conditional statements and privilege escalation sections that apply to multiple tasks. For example, using our MariaDB.yml file, I can actually place the entirety of my tasks into a block. And I've actually already done that in this playbook to show you how it looks. So if you see my block keyword here, I've placed all of the following tasks inside of the block. And then, still inside of the block, I have a conditional statement that applies to all the tasks in the block. And I set become yes to all the tasks inside of the block. So, by blocking off these tasks, I can now apply privilege escalation and a conditional statement to the whole block instead of to each task one at a time. This means that I can have two blocks in a playbook with one that targets Ubuntu hosts and one that targets RHEL and Cent hosts, and only have to include two conditional statements at the end of each block, which will save me a ton of time. Not to mention that I don't have to become the root user arbitrarily for the whole play and just apply that to specific block tasks as necessary. So, blocks also work terrifically with error handling. And I have a file here called blocks.yml that we're going to use for some practice. I can add a block with a task, a rescue section just in case something goes wrong, and an always section, which will happen whether there are errors or not. And so this is going to look something like the following. So I'll just do name, copying in a block, and then I'll put my copy task in here. The source set to temp test1.text, destination equals temp loops. Then I will include my rescue section here with my debug message of stop error time. And then I will include my always section with my debug message here. This message will always display. So before I move on, this is really good for error handling. So I have my task, the copy task. And if for some reason the file isn't found or the path doesn't exist or whatever, I have this rescue section in here that will display a message if something goes wrong. And then it will continue to move on to any other tasks I may have in my playbook. And the always section will always display regardless of whether there will be an error or not. So that's an example of error handling with blocks. Now I can also nest blocks and I'll keep going. And now I will put a debug message nesting some blocks. So this is possible, block nesting, but I wouldn't always recommend doing it. This is just an arbitrary example to show that it is possible to nest them. And so now I can actually run my playbook. So I'll exit out of here and run Ansible playbook I hosts blocks.yml. So it'll go through and gather facts. It's going to copy. Then I get my debug message of in the always section, this message will always display. And I get my debug message of nesting some blocks in the nested blocks section. However, if you notice, my stop error time debug message did not display because there was not a problem with the copy task.